Thank you for tuning in to the Atypical Pest Network. This resource has been designed to assist those of you dealing with unidentified animals in your homes to better resolve the infestation on your own, or to connect you with someone who might be able to assist you further. This network is a collaborative effort between Orion Pest Control over in Mercer County, Pennsylvania, and River Kings Pest Control Solutions located in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. All names have been changed in order to protect their owners. These cases can be disturbing and ultimately not suited for some individuals. As such, listener discretion is advised. Be safe out there.
Cockroaches, termites, and bees! Oh my!
We at Orion Pest Control understand that there's no place like home. Unfortunately, lots of things with too many legs appear to feel the same way. We may not be wizards, but click your heels 3 times and call 814 to get those little munchkins out. When one considers reaching out to a pest control company, it's ordinarily for common miscreants such as termites, bedbugs, rats, and the like. But there are companies out there that deal with some not-so-common household infestations. Orion Pest Control is one such specialty pest control company. Now, some of you may be wondering about what constitutes as an atypical pest, but in order to answer that question, we're going to have to take a look at one of Orion's most recent cases. But before we begin, we have an urgent message for those located in or near Mercer County, Pennsylvania. Avoid coming into contact with deer or any cervine fecal material. It may seem strange to bring up the latter, but we've seen some amazing things around here. And I say amazing in its truest definition. All of us have been amazed, disturbed, and yes, disgusted by the actions of many individuals. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the reason for this warning will become clear in just a moment. Orion Pest Control received a call from a client claiming that her dog was attacked by a doe of all things. Typically, deer tend to be rather skittish around humans as well as dogs, but upon the specialist's arrival, something was clearly off about this one. Henceforth, this specialist will be known as Nessa O'Donnell. Rest assured, this isn't her real name. We'll get into the importance of names in time, but for right now, listeners, just know to keep your true name hidden unless you can be certain that the one asking for it is human. In regards to the deer, chronic wasting disease seemed to be a reasonable possibility based on the client's description. One of the symptoms noted in affected animals is that they no longer become as averse to approaching people. Ordinarily, this is a job for the Department of Wildlife, but the frantic phone call to Orion had raised alarm bells in Nessa's mind.
It just came up and bit my dog, and now it's in my yard. It won't leave. I swear it's waiting for us to come back out.
CWD is a highly degenerative disease, so attacks from affected deer are typically brought about by confusion on the poor dying animal's part. Other telltale signs of infection include extreme emaciation and difficulty moving. As such, that prompted Nessa to question her further. What does the animal look like?
Its stomach is bulging, like it's pregnant maybe, and its fur is a mess. Oh god, it's just watching us through the window, drooling. Oh god.
That gave her pause. The distended stomach wasn't usual for CWD. Of course, it could have been another cervine disease that she wasn't aware of. Technically, she was correct about that latter part. After placing the client on a brief hold, Nessa alerted the Department of Wildlife to the situation. If something was spreading amongst the local fauna, atypical or otherwise, they'd need to be notified regardless. They informed her that it would be some time before they could get to the client, so in the end, Nessa thought it best to head over herself for the time being. At the very least, she thought that having someone else there might calm the client a little. All Orion employees are required to keep a container of salt, a firearm, and a silver knife on their person at all times. However, as a facility that has been qualified to deal with limited wildlife removal services such as raccoons and skunks, a tranquilizer gun is also available when deemed necessary. It certainly seemed necessary, so Nessa brought that along with her other equipment. Nessa didn't see the doe when she arrived at the property initially, so she circled around to the backyard. An expensive-looking swing set shaped like a castle stood guard like a colorful protective fortress, the chains of its swing squeaking slightly in the wind. The lawn looked to have been freshly manicured, as evidenced by how the grass was streaked with a perfect plaid pattern that the mower had left behind. Then, there it was. standing on bent, unsteady legs that looked more bony than they should have. The poor animal appeared to have gotten tangled in a burdock bush at one point, leaving a cluster of burrs in the animal's dirty flank. Its ears were drawn close to its head, foamy strings of drool trailing down to the white patch of fur on its chest. CWD or not, the animal was definitely sick. Best not to get near it. When Nessa raised the tranquilizer gun towards it, the doe stomped, its foot digging into the lawn. Then it snorted as if in challenge. Nessa accepted its call to aggression by aiming at the deer's side and pulling the trigger. It let out a small grunt of alarm, taking a few ungainly steps towards her. She stepped back in an effort to keep some distance till the sedative could take effect. The doe shuddered, muzzle parting like it was about to vomit. At first, Nessa thought that the pink thing in its mouth was its tongue, but then more appeared. Long tendrils unfurled from its throat, stretching along the grass towards her, a loud crack echoing in Nessa's ears as the deer's jaw snapped. The deer's body convulsed violently, its bloated stomach rapidly shrinking as these abhorrent things slithered out of her mouth. Nessa's stomach lurched at the sight. Little fun fact about her, she's terrified of worms. Rats, snakes, spiders, and most other common phobias are no problem for her, but worms? For reasons she could never explain, they've always made her skin crawl. Our hero let out a professional-sounding whimper as she doubled back for the swing set. Silently, she hoped that the client couldn't see her. She doubted that this display would instill confidence in her abilities as a pest control specialist. The deer had fallen to the ground, the poor animal still alive and racked with violent shakes as its body was dragged across the lawn by the worms crawling out of its throat, inching its way after her in pursuit. A low, pained grunt came from the deer each time that it was jerked along. Once Nessa had finished pulling herself into the swing set's tower, she took aim at the deer's head with her pistol and fired. Blood and gray matter splashed across the yard. The worms twitched, thrashing around like jump ropes wielded by particularly aggressive toddlers. She shrank back with a grimace, becoming slightly nauseous when she looked a little too closely at where they protruded from what was left of the deer's open mouth. She fired again. The worms jolted from the impact, their thrashes becoming more lethargic as their host was put out of its misery. Their ropey bodies slowed their convulsing down to mere twitches until they eventually laid limp on the ground, fanned out in separate directions along the grass. Afterwards, Nessa watched the worms warily, not convinced that they weren't going to suddenly start writhing again. Gingerly, she reached for the salt sitting at the front of her tool belt, wondering if she should go down and pour it on the worms. Make sure that they were actually dead. A general rule of thumb if you think that you're dealing with an unidentified animal is that salt is intolerable to most things. Not everything, but most things. Ground up white eggshells can be used as well if you're environmentally conscious, though that requires more time and preparation. As such, all that our hero had to do was go down there, where they were. Worms roughly the length and width of human intestines. Worms that appeared to have taken over the body of a deer. With a frown, she grumbled under her breath. Fuck me. With a deep breath, she reluctantly slid down the slide to get down from the tower. Nessa's a big woman, standing at a shade above 6 feet tall, so she scooted only a tiny bit before the soles of her work boots touched the ground. With her jaw clenched in anticipation, she leapt to her feet as one of the worms weakly squirmed, trying fruitlessly to get nearer to her. She was close enough to see now that it had a round, jawless mouth, edged by rows upon rows of curved, sharp teeth. Resisting the urge to flinch away, she lifted the lid for the salt, then dumped it on the horrible creature. It began its thrashing anew, and she jumped back, preparing to run back onto the swing set like the badass that she is, but to her relief, the worm seemed to be in its death throes. After its last bout of writhing, its movement finally ceased. After Nessa was certain that the nightmare creature was actually dead, this process was repeated with the other worms until all of them were as immobile as cut ropes in the grass. A car door slammed. Nessa was too busy observing the worms for any signs of life to see who was approaching.
Sorry we're late.
She recognized the voice of an officer she knows as Lowry. Still not looking away from the parasites, Nessa joked. Oh sure, yins show up when the hard work's already done.
Yup. That's the way to do it.
She heard his footsteps stop abruptly a few yards away.
The hell?
Nessa excused herself, leaving Lowry and his partner, whom she didn't recognize, to scratch their heads. But as she stalked away, she overheard the pair muttering amongst themselves at having never seen anything like that before, as well as something being mentioned about running tests on the deer. She knocked on the client's door, then immediately shoved her hands into her jacket pockets to hide that they were shaking. The client was already freaked out enough. It wouldn't help matters if she saw that Nessa was equally unnerved, especially considering the troubling news that Nessa was about to deliver. Nessa informed her that the deer's body was being taken by the Department of Wildlife. She then strongly advised her to take her dog to the vet to check for any signs that the worms may have infected it. As expected, the client's face paled.
Worms?
Unfortunately, yes, Nessa replied, resisting a shudder as she recalled their rows of teeth against her will. I don't know how these species of parasites spread, so just to be safe, have your dog checked. The Department of Wildlife is going to take over from here. They'll be able to give you more information once they've checked the deer out. The client was flabbergasted, but nodded along. Once Nessa was done, the client grabbed her keys and hastily, but politely, asked,
Do you need anything else from me?
Nessa tried to be reassuring as she replied, No, you go ahead and do what you need to do. Hope everything turns out all right. With that, Nessa turned and left the client to it. Prior to departing, she saw the wildlife guys were suiting up to pack the deer into their truck, donning rubber gloves, masks, face shields, and rubber aprons before getting anywhere near the cadaver.
We are going to check this thing out, see what we can find.
Lowry's voice was somewhat muffled by his protective Sunday best, but Nessa got the message all the same.
We'll keep you and Vic in the loop.
Sure enough, later that evening, Nessa received a call from them. They wanted to know exactly what she did to kill the worms. She relayed the entire salting process to them as she grew steadily more concerned.
The client's dog is in quarantine.
Lowry informed her gravely.
They found some strange readings in its blood work.
That made Nessa's blood chill. Great.
If you think that's great, you're going to love this. We advise your client and anyone else that came into contact with either the deer or the pooch to get checked out. I'm going to extend that same advice to you.
Once again, Nessa's heart beat faster at the prospect of those things growing inside of her. All she could say to sum up how she was feeling was, great! To her knowledge, she hadn't come into contact with any infected biological material, but she knew better than to take chances with things like this. Hence, she got her happy ass to a doctor.